Why do we ask these questions, Jim?
Well, I'll tell you, I think because the citizens should have another opinion.
Because the record of the management of this city and the money that everybody is putting into it in their tax dollars is not that great. That's why we ask questions. Because there's a real sketchy history in terms of who's managing this place. So, welcome back to Talking Racine on this beautiful Monday morning. This is episode number 100.
Yes, it
Hit
is.
the century mark. What are you
Wow.
Spottic?
Yeah,
That's very good.
Who would have ever thought about the big project down on the lakefront? Where the
$50 million. This is a really big one, right?
Yeah, at least $50 million bucks.
I mean,
More than $50 million bucks.
Yeah. This is biggest since
Walker
Machinery Row,
since Walker Manufacturing. Yeah, since Machinery Row. Machinery Row was
that was the biggest
in 30 years, and
years,
then the arena was the biggest in what?
Big and bold.
Big and bold.
Yeah. I remember saying we're done with these small projects. Let's do something big.
Yes,
Right.
Like
audacious.
Yeah, I think that was.
We're gonna get out there.
This is the last
Riverworks.
splash,
I think that was. We got to do something big.
Yeah.
What do we got done so far? Jeez,
Big.
Weeds.
Whatever it is, it's big.
Yeah, they're tearing down
Yeah.
the Machinery Row property, so that's pretty big, you know.
Yeah.
But this is going to be $50 million, and they're talking about 242. What kind of apartments?
Market rate.
What does that mean?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about.
Well, let's
exactly
talk about that.
Yeah, the market rate apartments. You know what? I'm going to play a quick video here of Corey talking about it, asking, what are they? And he says 242 market rate apartments. So
how many market rate units?
Oh yeah, so we mentioned it. I'll say it again. So it's at least 242 in the first phase, with more to come. So it's an exciting development. Yes.
Well, he distinctly said market rate housing. But what does market rate mean? I mean, this is what is the name of this group? Royal
Capital Group.
Royal Capital Group. They seem like they're an active player, you know.
Yeah. No, we've did a little digging, and they've done projects in Milwaukee. They're actually next to the new Bucks Stadium.
So this company was up in Milwaukee, and
Yeah.
that's their reference.
Yep, that's the big
Well, we
reference,
did
right.
this job up here in Milwaukee, and you're saying what kind of job? Those were those market rate apartments?
330 affordable and market rate units over the next few years. Milwaukee Journal, June 13, 2017.
So that's what they're doing up in Milwaukee.
Right.
Okay.
They also did some in Madison. There was a Mill Road library project, and they received Wisconsin Housing and Economic Development Authority money. You know, and whenever you come into a
That's the
project,
low-income housing tax credits.
right? You know,
So these sound like low-income housing. Low-income housing.
yeah. I guess the term is affordable, affordable
Okay,
housing,
the
but it's
affordable housing.
subsidized.
Yeah.
You know, financing is
I
subsidized.
think that's
by-
the key element.
Right.
It's subsidized
Right.
housing. I think that's the best adjective for it.
Right.
Well, and here they got Royal Group started construction on the flats at Grandview Commons. That's a 94-unit affordable housing community.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
No, I mean that's what they do. But the fact to come in and say this is market rate, I just have this problem with, without spelling out exactly what the project is. I mean, it's it could be a great project, all the rest, but spell it out. If the government's involved and the taxpayers own that piece of property, they should be told everything that's
Tell us
going
what
on.
we're funding.
Right.
No,
Tell us what we're
I
doing.
tell you what, it's going to be hard for Racine to do that in Racine. This is right out of the same newspaper day article, but not the same article, different article. But Jim Palahniuk, that's our city administrator, said the financing gap exists in Racine because Racine's property taxes are relatively high and rents relatively low. So when you talk about a market rate or unsubsidized housing in Racine, it's really hard because our taxes are relatively high and our rents are relatively low.
Right.
So that in itself, it tells you. That's where that's my problem with when you go to the source of a problem. That's where the problem really is. It's not because we need more housing or something like that. The problem is our taxes are relatively high. That's the main one. The rents are relatively low. Shouldn't be a problem. has
No.
to be a benefit to consumers.
Right.
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 Okay,
Right.
More people should flock here because the rent is cheaper.
Yeah.
But since we're paying taxes that are 3 times what Sturtevant is paying and twice what the other
yeah,
some
yeah,
surrounding
I mean,
communities
when
are
you got
paying.
double the tax rate,
Yeah.
you know, that's what causes the problem. And when we're ready as a community, as voters, and as people that are elected to reduce taxes and get them down to that rate, I think we're going to find out. Now these companies can come in here
Right.
and they can build something without needing millions of dollars of taxpayer subsidies.
And HUD comes in on a project like this. Now, Machinery Row, I know they had the same thing. They were talking market rate. There was never market rate. That was all HUD subsidized. And I don't know, because we don't know what the financing is here. But to try to make these
Yeah, that's
projects
what the market
work,
is. People
yeah.
that don't have any money.
And I think
Right.
market rate's going to include the cost of construction.
And that
Could
breaks
be-
down to about $200,000 a unit.
Right. And
Now, that's an awful lot for an apartment building. Now, granted, I mean,
Yeah.
you get it when you're talking a building and you're talking about, site improvements, and it will run into a large amount. These particular guys, I did a little digging on these guys. Now, they do hold on to their units. Now, usually what happens is like they'll come in and they'll put a project, a company will put a project together, and then they like to spin those off because the management is the killer on those units because you don't make any money. The money's made up front in the construction. These guys supposedly hang on to it.
It's a different mechanics. It's a different operation. It's a different trade.
Right.
Constructing something is a lot different than renting it out and managing it. It's just two totally different functions. So I understand why if a company's in the business of building things, building and selling them, that's their business. Now, if they're also going to manage it, that means they have a second business.
And where is the market rate for this? I mean, I want to know if it's market rate, then where's the market study to say, this is something that will function and not sit empty?
What did you say? Somebody did the math and they were talking about a $200,000 cost for
Right.
each one of these units, the construction cost.
Right.
If you get $2,000 a month, that's 100 months right there just for the cost of construction.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's like no management, no maintenance, no overhead, none of that
It's
stuff.
difficult. Yeah,
So
it's
100
difficult.
months that's like
10
8.5 years.
Yeah. You
And that's assuming you're not having any interest
Right.
to pay on the loan,
yeah.
which you're probably
Which
going to
you
have.
do.
You're going to have to
Yeah, what you
finance
do.
this.
No, it's a. There's an awful lot of questions to ask, and when you, all right, if you guys want to talk about what the city of Racine's doing now, apparently they're going to purchase this Walker site for $3.2 million.
Well, Royal Group is
Royal
purchasing
Group,
it, yeah.
but and we, our taxpayers, are subsidizing 200 and some parking spaces at $28,000 a parking spot, which means it's fairly hefty, and then another.
Well, that's
I think it was,
infrastructure.
the figures right in the
Yeah.
paper there. That's the
Yeah.
cost.
Almost $6.5 million for the construction of 2 parking
Now,
structures.
the problem I have with it too is
Streets and sidewalks, another
Right.
$1,049,000.
now
$1,049,000.
most of the time subdivisions. If you're going to put a subdivision in, let's say you take a farm field and it's like, boy, the people would love to live here, and whatever. The developer comes in, he lays out the plat, and the roads, the sewer, the water, he goes to the municipality, they have to work everything out, the grading, all that has to be done. Then, the lots are staked out, and then those lots are sold. If those lots are sold for a profit, and it has to cover the cost of that infrastructure. Well, in this case, the city's picking up that infrastructure, because that's what they've offered to do here. Now, that's the kicker when you're talking about financing, public financing, and that's the problem with a project. And I'm not trying to throw cold water in this. I know we always come in this like, well, we throw cold water on everything, but hell, you got to ask some questions here, and I think that's the problem. In that newspaper article, hell, it doesn't even mention the fact that there's roughly $8 million going into this project from the city coffers.
Well, and when government has to get involved with it, to me, that automatically says there's a problem, because if the project is going to make money on its own, if it's a good project, it's well thought out financially, and it's planned properly, it doesn't need subsidy in order to build it. You just
Right.
go ahead and build it. The Johnson Foundation is putting up a big plant, big expansion plan. All I've heard about that is they're putting up a big expansion
Right,
plan.
right, we're
I haven't
expanding.
heard anything
Right.
about, but Mount Pleasant is gonna put in some roadways, and
Right.
we're getting this much money from various other government sources. They just come in and they're going to build it.
Right.
Now, they may be getting into the swing of things. We may find out differently if we go down the road, but that's the typical way that a company comes in and does something. It comes in and builds it. And your small businesses all do that,
Right.
because there's no political interest in it, because it's only maybe 4 or 5 jobs, or maybe just starting off with 2 jobs, a couple of people starting up a restaurant or something like that. So there's no government subsidy at all, but they come in with their own money and their own venture and their own risk, and they just say, okay, we're going to do this. And they succeed or fail, and all on their own.
You live and die on it.
And that's what it is, and that's the traditional way of coming in and doing it. So when like when Foxconn came in, remember we saw that stage, and there were the president and the governor and all these politicians on
Dollar
the
bills
stage.
with wings on them.
with one businessman, you say, hold on a second here, what's wrong with this picture?
We call that, and that's the other part of this. Foxconn's going to fill this apartment complex.
Oh, yeah.
And I just, again, there's so many questions that, if you're going to come in, let's just say this is your money and it's going to be put into this project.
What is your money?
Yeah, well, I'm
Some of
talking
it,
about
yeah.
a developer's money. If it's an actual developer that says, I think I can make some money on this lakefront property, and I'm going to put the money in it to do it. We don't have those developers, because the problem is exactly what you said. Our taxes are too high. The medium income of Racine is too low,
And the restrictions on trying to build something,
right,
is
so you've got
tremendous.
all
There's
this
huge barriers.
against you. So what they have to do, and truthfully, and we talked about this earlier, is the political motivation to do something in Racine, like the arena, which we were going to this taxpayer was going to fund, by the way, and then the machinery row and all the other different projects. But the only thing that's really been I don't even want to call it successful. The only thing that's been built has been affordable housing, and we continue to do that.
That's about it.
Yeah.
That's true. That's where the money comes in.
Yeah.
Because it's got government subsidies.
Here's a real nebulous expense right here. I mean, nebulous meaning you don't know what.
Yeah.
It's just kind of floating out there. And that's the remediation cost to take that land from an industrial standard.
Now, remediation. What is that? What are remediation costs?
Oh, remediation is, this is an old industrial
It sounds
plant.
like fixing something.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, there's a lot of pollution, basically.
Okay.
To put it in
On
one
the
big
Walker
box.
site?
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's an old industrial site, so there's a lot of things that happen there that just kind of seep down into the soil, and it's a dirty site.
Okay.
So it is now at industrial standards. It's going to have to be brought up to residential standard, and the city is going to foot the bill for that. Now,
Well-
Amy Connolly says that's like insignificant, but when these people start talking about your money, what they think is insignificant might not be what you think is insignificant. So that's
Especially when she's just blown $10 million on machinery roll.
Right.
What's
And
insignificant to her?
let's go to Amy Connolly.
But it's only going to be $5 million.
Yeah, nothing. She's the queen of low-income housing. That's why they kicked her out of Tinley Park. Tinley Park.
Oh, that's
That
right.
was
She put in that project.
Yeah,
that the whole community didn't want him, but she managed to change
Zoning.
one of the ordinances or
Right.
something so that it could be done.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So I mean, that's a whole other. She was treated poorly. Nah, she's the queen of low-income housing. And what else do we have here, really? I mean, I'm sorry to say that, but that's the truth. But let's just. I know we get criticized sometimes for saying, "Oh, you guys are always negative."
Somebody
but-
criticizes us?
Well, because
Who the heck are
we're
they?
the only ones that dig. You don't find this. You don't find this in the local newspaper.
No.
We'll glean and we'll dig a little bit deeper on somebody's, and we'll ask the questions. And it's sometimes extremely difficult to get answers.
Why do we
sometimes.
ask these questions, Jim?
Well, I'll tell you. I think because the citizens should have another opinion.
Because
on
the
some-
record of the management of this city and the money that everybody is putting into it in their tax dollars is not that great. That's why we ask questions. Because there's a real sketchy history in terms of who's managing this place.
And
That's
you look
why.
at the purpose of government. You know, in a free society, the government doesn't do this. It's up to the individuals to make, just like we talk about the small company coming in. It's up to them to make it or go broke doing it all on their own.
Are you saying we're not a free society, George?
And, you know, that's the role of government, I'm saying. But when you get into a fascist state, now the government's going to come in and they're going to regulate and subsidize and all that type of stuff. You get into a socialist state, private sector isn't even thought about. The government just does it, all on its own.
Yep.
So right now we are in what I would call a fascist state. In other words, the government's got to come in and it's got to subsidize the taxpayers. And the old rule of fascism is that profits are private, losses are public. So if the company loses money, the taxpayers pay for it.
Right.
If it makes money, then they get to keep it.
I agree with you.
And
I think that's a perfect
just the
example
government
of
regulation
Foxconn.
of it.
That's Foxconn to a T.
Well, and the thing is that's why I appreciate Jim when he comes up with this stuff. He concerns about he's sounds like he's nitpicking and complaining and all that stuff. As a libertarian, I'm concerned that the government is that involved, because I know philosophically, as far as this country goes, it's the wrong way to go. It should not be involved. So when Jim's picking at it, I think he's got a good foundation on it because we're working under this wrong standard for government. All right, in a free society, the government just wouldn't be involved. They'd say, "Well, we got this."
Or at
land
least there
here,
should be some questions. If government gets involved, then you have a right and an obligation to tell the public of what exactly is going on.
There's something going on that the government's involved in subsidizing business.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that's happened in Racine is that we don't have that people power into our local government. What we have is sound bites from the local older persons, the mayor, the administrators that come in and say, "Well, here's a great project that we're going to do." You don't have that incorporation of your elected body. You know, now we come in and we're going to get into that in the next section. This is a gal at a door in California talking about harvesting ballots for elections.
Hey, I'm looking for Brandy. It's Lulu. I came here to pick up your ballot. Yeah, we're offering this new service, but only to people who are supporting the Democratic Party. It's a service. I'm just trying to pick up your ballot and show you how to do it if you don't know. Yeah, it's new. Bill just passed last year at the end. So there's been a problem with people half the ballots that were mailed out last year didn't get back. A lot of people weren't signing the envelope in the back and stuff. But okay. Yeah, well, I think the bill that was passed and stuff, it's not like I'm gonna take it and fabricate it. But it has to be sealed and it has to be signed for me to even touch it. Okay. Okay. That's okay.
So I think that's the lead line. What the heck happened in this last election, the midterm? I mean, the voter turnout was off the charts.
Yeah.
We had about 26,000 voters
In the city of Racine. We're talking the city of Racine.
And in the
Well, it was off the
mayoral
chart
election was what, about
across
11,000?
the country too. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
In the mayoral election.
Well, I think it was about 11,000.
Okay.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Yeah.
The spring election was around 11,000. This fall election was roughly around 26,000. But it's
Crazy numbers.
crazy numbers because when you go back, if you go back far enough to the presidential election, I think of 2000, what was Obama, 2008, there were some big turnouts. But even this, the difference I think here is the absentee ballots and the early voting. Now, the city of Racine, if you go back, Corey Mason, new mayor, set up I don't want to call them kiosks, but different
Kiosks?
kiosks.
It's a Russian word, I think. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, anyway, voting where you could come in and vote at early voting at not only City Hall but at I think it was the John Bryant Center and Cesar Chavez Center, and you could come in. But one of the things that when you see this is ballot harvesting. I mean, they come out there and literally pick up your ballot, an absentee ballot, fill it out. They take it and run it down to the wherever they drop them off. And California, in that particular one, was California had lost a number of elections. The Democrats, obviously, you saw her saying, if you're going to be voting Democratic, we'll run it down there for you. So they set this mechanism up to basically harvest votes. So are they doing that in Racine? And you know what? I think they are. Matter of fact, I know they are.
Well, the problem, as I see it, is that it's become a partisan competition.
Exactly.
It's no longer a competition of ideas. It's a party competition, and
Who loses?
I'm not sure either one of the major parties has got all that good of an idea about how to run things.
Well, the Republicans have gerrymandered districts. The Democrats now, in retaliation, is now harvesting, running into your. I mean, how many times are
It's a mess. It really
How
is.
many times, really, in the city, do they come to your door? You're going to vote for so-and-so, you're going to vote for so-and-so. If you're a voter, you've gotten multiple people at your doors. And that's the harvesting.
Yeah.
And who really
We'll
benefits
give you a ride
from
to the
it?
poll. Have you voted yet today?
Yeah, and
Yeah,
they'll
come
call
on, I
you,
got
they'll
the car
talk
right
to you,
here.
they'll be at your door. So, I mean, that's the... And I read somewhere where the Republicans are saying, man, that's a system that worked this time. We're going to have to figure out how we're going to make it work for us.
boy.
So what do? We just have two-party system that is now controlling basically the elections. I can tell you for a fact that there's been a huge amount of money that came in from New York and California into Little Racine. And the working parties has been well funded in City Racine, who is really a Democratic outreach. They call them the working party. But
Working-
it's-
Yeah, the
Working
working
Family
party
Party?
isn't,
Yeah.
isn't that much of the working party
No,
anymore. I mean,
it's not the working
when you've
party.
got
You're talking about
I-
Working Family Party,
the
right?
working family
Yeah.
party, sorry.
when you got high taxes and low rents,
Right.
that's not exactly in favor of the working party. The whole the Democrats I think have lost their way. I mean the Kennedys and the Proxmires, remember the Golden Fleece
Yeah,
Award that he
yep,
used
yeah.
to think.
Yep.
There was concern.
Well, they had integrity too.
Yeah. There was concern about finances. There was concern about money. Kennedy was one of them that dropped the tax rate and saw an increase in productivity.
Well, there used to be members of both parties that were concerned about being representative of the people
Right.
that they were voted to represent.
Right. Well,
And-
now it's the Democrats have become a party of identity. In other
Yeah.
words, it's
Right.
white versus black versus Hispanic versus rich versus poor.
Right,
It's
social
the
engineering in
the
a
whole
way.
thing. Yeah, it's the whole thing is to divide people into little groups, get them fighting amongst one another, and then get the support from the downtrodden.
Well, one thing about we travel around a lot of the county here, or this first congressional district anyway. And one thing I noticed was you go into the county. I mean, the Democrats have they almost like have closed it off and said, we're going to be.
They've
this
abandoned the county.
They really
pretty
have. I
much,
mean, they
yeah.
know nothing about soybeans or cattle or any of the stuff that may affect the farming
No.
community. They really don't.
Their stock and trade is free bus rides and food stamps.
Yeah, and then of course you got the Republicans out there who just drill down on it and utilize that and absolutely have no idea what's going on the other side of it. But what happens is there's two competitions and who can drag out the most votes to keep that party in office. It's not about representative government. That's the last thing that we've completely lost that. And it's your $20 or your $50 that's going to go to that campaign. Don't even send it. It means absolutely nothing. It will do nothing for them because they get
They got millions coming in anyway.
millions of
Yeah.
dollars. These campaigns have gone to the point where
How much did the two majors spend in this last congressional election?
I think it was
probably about $15 million between the
maybe
two of them.
above that even.
Yeah.
I think Bryce was probably closer to 8 or 9 million, and I think Stiles, of course, he says only 3 or 4 million.
Well, yeah, but
he gets PAC money.
Yeah, he got a lot of PAC money. So we calculated it out, and
I don't know what the
cost,
answer
the
is.
cost per vote, or the price per vote, on the Democratic side was $58.
Yeah. For every vote they got, they spent $58.
Yeah, I'm sure that the Republican is comparable.
Yeah.
You know, when you count in the PAC money, which, you know, it's
But
not
who are
going to
you
be registered
who are
as
you
part of his
representing
campaign,
at
but
that
it
point?
is.
You know, I mean, I was in Rock County, and I was in Racine County, and Kenosha County, and Walworth County, and I mean, you can just see how they just gear it to that demographic, and they just play to it. But when it really comes down to legislation and representation, it's a soft
Yeah.
soap always going on. And
Party line.
Yeah, party
Yeah.
line. And the Democrats do exactly the same thing.
Comes right down to it. There are very, very few people that are in control of these parties.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
How many of you are a member of a party? I'll bet you very few of you can say, "Oh, I'm a member of the Democratic or I'm a member of the Republican Party." But are you? I mean, do you have a membership card? Have you paid dues, or do you just consider yourself to be a member of the party because that's the way you vote most of the time?
Right. I mean,
the party itself is a small, close, tight-knit group
Yep.
on both sides. And they determine who the candidates are going to be way in advance.
Yep.
I mean, we knew a long time before the primaries who the candidates were going to be.
Oh, yeah.
You
No
know?
doubt about it.
I hadn't even heard of Style until shortly before the election. And when we stopped and talked to that guy up in Madison, that's really the first time that I heard much about him and started thinking he's their candidate.
Yeah, he even said that's the candidate. You know,
Yeah.
that will be the candidate. You know?
Yeah.
That's the way it goes. I mean, it's
amazing.
It's not though. It's you know we really have lost representative government. I mean, it's just, and now we're losing it. And we're seeing. I mean, I see it locally here too.
How is the vote harvesting affecting that? What's its impact on
Well,
the scenario you
it's
laid
money,
out?
George. It's money. If you're paying individuals to go door to door, how are you able to do that when you say, you know, it used to be, you knew your local representative because they were at the coffee shop, at the restaurant. You'd see them at a committee meeting,
Yeah.
and now they're almost in the outside. You've got campaign managers, you've got marketing campaigns, and you have dollars pumping in to put volunteers. They call them volunteers, but they're paid, and then they go door to door, and their job is to drag you to the polls to get them to vote. Just like this gal, if you're going to vote Democratic, we'll take your ballot to the poll. If you want to ride to the polls, we'll be there for you. We'll get your number and these like the way that they can target these voters. They have it so pinpointed. They know exactly what each voter and how they vote, when they voted, you know, what their issues
Yeah,
are.
they pretty much know if you voted Republican or Democrat, and
so
they
just
certainly know
target
if you
that.
voted it at all.
So what I want to make here before we get out is that young people have to realize that, you know, basically a lot of them, you know, they just line up on this ideal that, you know, this is, but look at every aspect of it, you know, do some critical thinking and understand, in a lot of ways you're being used. I mean, Democrats
Yeah.
and Republicans, but you really have to critically think about what's happening around you, and are these issues really your issues, or are they the party issues that you've been led like a herd of cattle to
Well, there was
endorse?
very few commercials that really talked about issues.
No,
in
there's
that
no.
campaign.
The issues are dead.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
all about personality.
No, if you notice, no party ever talks about the endless wars we have and the amount of the military-industrial complex. No one talks about that. I mean, they don't talk about the two we always talked about it: abortion and guns. You know, those are the two. Here, one's abortion.
The Great
one's
Divide, yeah.
Why has abortion? If the Republicans had full control, why do we still have the abortion issue?
Yeah.
You know, they don't want it to go away. The gun issue on the other side, you know, well, the gun control, all the rest, they don't want it to go away. There has to be this articles so we don't look too far into what's really happening around you and the loss of rights and the loss of representation. So anyway, I'm off my soapbox.
Yeah, and I think the basic goal for both these parties is the quest for power, and they want control over the money that's going into government and the money that's associated with that, and we can see that more clearly right here on a local basis. In other words, the powers that be are controlling the deals being made. They control how money's being spent. They control where it goes, who gets the little extra on the side, that type of stuff. Gain power, hold power, and make money off of that power, and that's what we're seeing.
Well, you know, there's this illusion of bipartisan competition or inter-party competition. But then they come up with these big projects like Foxconn, and they talk about that as being cross-party cooperation. I look on it more as partisan collusion, where they're working together with something like that. I mean, when you see somebody like Corey Mason and Robin Voss on the same platform together, touting some kind of a project, it makes me a little uncomfortable. It really does.
Well, they're really not that far apart. I mean,
No.
you really
Well,
don't
there's
think
something
about
in it for both of them.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
Yeah,
Robin
both.
Voss and the power of the state, and,
Right.
and Corey Mason with the power of the city.
Right.
And that the two aren't necessarily at swords with each other. I'm sure both
No,
of them
not
would
at
like
all.
to have someone from their party replacing that person.
And they'd
that's
like to
across the
control and
table.
direct wealth, and
Yeah.
you know, if a little
Right.
bit falls out on the ground where they can pick it up, that's nice too.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, during the course of a transaction, there's always a little bit of wastage.
No,
somewhere.
and that's the way politics has been
Yeah.
for a long
Right.
time.
And we hope that you have a wonderful week, and we thank you for spending some time with us. It's been good being with you guys again, as always, and we'll see you next week.